All right, so today we're diving into um,
Mm-hmm.
Victor Lowenfeld's 1949 book,
Okay.
Creative and Mental Growth.
Right?
And it's all about
Yeah.
how kids develop
Yeah.
artistically. And I think this is going to be fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. This book is like a classic
Yeah.
in the field of art education, and it
I can't wait.
was really groundbreaking for its time.
Yeah.
You know, recognizing that kids' art
Right.
isn't just about the finished product, it's like a window into
It's a process.
their thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, how they see the world.
Yeah. So let's start with the beginning. You know, Lowenfeld talks about this scribbling stage. And I think we've all seen this.
Yeah.
You give a toddler a crayon, and they just go to town and make
So-
these what look like random scribbles.
Chaotic, wonderful.
Right. But it turns out there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, there's so much more going on there
Yeah.
than meets the eye. Lowenfeld observed that for toddlers, it's all about
Oh, really?
the kinesthetic experience, you know, that joy of movement and
The feeling of the crayon
it's in such
gliding across the paper, they're not really aiming for a recognizable image at this point.
that makes sense.
Mm.
I can picture my little nephew, you know, just like giggling away.
Exactly. And, it's interesting. This actually connects back to
Uh,
Piaget's work on child development, his
Yes.
sensorimotor stage,
yeah,
where children are learning about the world through their senses and actions.
through that movement.
Exactly. So
yeah.
those scribbles, they're not just random.
Wow.
They're mini experiments in cause and effect.
So as adults then, how should we be thinking about,
That's a great question.
you know, a toddler making these scribbles? What can we do?
Well, I think Lowenfeld gives some really good practical advice here.
Okay.
He suggests offering tools that encourage those big free movements,
So like big crayons.
big crayons, chunky
Yeah.
markers, things like that.
Okay.
Watercolors are too runny at this stage. Pencils might be too sharp.
Too much control.
Yeah, it's about giving them tools that allow for that free exploration. So finger painting, what do you think, good or bad?
You know, finger painting can be great,
Yeah.
but Lowenfeld actually cautions against making it the only medium.
Oh, interesting.
Because even at this young age, you know, toddlers want to use tools.
They want to hold something.
Yeah, they have that instinct.
That's fascinating.
So it's about providing that variety.
Okay, so we've got these little ones experimenting with making marks and that sensation of moving the crayon around. What comes next?
So this is where the concept of the schema comes in.
Okay.
And think of it as like a recurring symbol that a child creates.
Okay.
Kind of their shorthand for representing something.
Like how a kid always draws people as stick figures.
Exactly. And it's not about realism at this point. It's about what Lowenfeld calls active knowledge.
Active knowledge. Okay.
Yeah. So that schema, it's not about copying what they see. It's about expressing what they know about something.
What's important to them?
What's important to them
Oh.
exactly.
So I'm picturing a kid drawing their family and the parents are taller than the kids, or maybe the family pet is like front and center
Yes.
because that's important.
It's their world.
Yeah.
It's not a photograph. It's a representation of their relationship.
That's how they see it.
Exactly. And you know what's so cool is that each child's schema is unique.
Oh, that makes sense.
One child might draw big hands on everyone because hands are how we hug. Another child might emphasize everyone's smiles because, you know, happiness is key in their family. It's their own personal language.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So it's more than just like, oh, the kid needs to learn how to draw better. It's like, what is the kid trying to tell me
Exactly.
by drawing it this way?
It's a form of communication.
Yeah.
And Lowenfeld gives this great example in the book about a child drawing himself reaching for an apple.
Okay.
And the child's arm is like elongated. The hand is exaggerated,
Yeah.
showing just how much he wants that apple.
It's about the desire,
It's about the desire.
not the realism.
Exactly. It's not anatomically correct,
Right.
but it's emotionally powerful.
It's like those cave paintings
Yes.
where they draw the animals larger than life.
I love that comparison.
It's
yeah.
not about scale, it's about importance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as kids move on from this scribbling stage,
Yeah.
they start to grapple with this concept of space.
Okay. I imagine this is where things get more complex.
It does get more complex, and what Lowenfeld noticed is that
Cool.
kids don't initially understand space the way that we do as adults.
Of course.
So they might draw a house, a person, and a car all on the same page, but they're all just floating separately.
There's no relationship.
No sense of perspective in the way that we think about it.
Interesting.
To them, each element exists on its own.
So how do they start to develop?
So that's a great question.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what Lowenfeld observed is that the bottom edge of the paper becomes really key.
Okay.
He calls it the baseline.
Okay.
And it becomes the ground for their world. So they start placing things on this baseline,
Interesting.
and that's their first step towards understanding how things relate to each other spatially.
So the paper itself becomes a landscape for them.
Exactly. And then you have these amazing X-ray drawings
Oh, yeah.
where kids will show you the inside and the outside of things at the same time.
Oh, I love those. I've seen those. They're so funny.
They're delightful.
Yeah.
Like a house with the furniture visible through the walls.
Right. Or a person with their skeleton showing.
Exactly. And remember, they're not bound by the same rules of visual logic as we are.
It's what's important to them.
To them, if it's important, it needs to be shown.
Right. Even if it's hidden.
Even if it's hidden in reality.
Like that picture book where you can see like all the pipes and wires
Yes.
inside the
indeed.
walls of the house.
Lowenfeld shares an example of a child drawing a coal mine,
Okay.
where the mountain is both the terrain and a cross-section revealing the miners working underground.
Wow.
Two perspectives in one.
They're starting to think on multiple levels. So we've got the scribbles. They're evolving into these more complex representations.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting to understand space.
Yeah.
What's next in this journey?
What's next, indeed.
Yeah. So we talked about scribbling those schemata, the X-ray drawings. What about color?
Ah, yes, color. This is where things get really fascinating with Lowenfeld.
Okay.
He observed that children's initial responses to color are very emotional.
Okay.
They're drawn to bright, vibrant colors.
Okay. So not realistic colors.
Not necessarily realistic applications.
So that classic purple sun or blue dog.
It's all about pure emotional expression.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? Lowenfeld actually cautions against
Oh.
teaching rigid color theories to young children.
Like color wheels and all that?
Yeah, like using color wheels and, having strict rules about which colors go together.
Right, right.
He thinks that can actually stifle their creativity at this stage.
So let them experiment.
Exactly.
Let them have fun with it.
Encourage those natural emotional reactions to color.
I like that.
Yeah.
And, that actually makes me think about his thoughts on design.
Yes. Good connection.
Because he also talks about how good design shouldn't just be about aesthetics.
Right.
It should be connected to the material and its purpose.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's not just about making something look pretty.
Right.
It's about understanding the properties of the material.
Okay, so give me an example. How does this apply to something like making a clay pot?
Okay, so think about a well-designed clay pot. It takes into account the properties of the clay itself, how malleable it is, its texture.
Right.
It considers the tools used to create it, whether it's a potter's wheel or the sculptor's hands.
Okay.
And crucially, it needs to fulfill its purpose as a container.
Right, to hold something.
To hold something, exactly.
So it's got to be functional.
Form and function working together.
Yeah, I like that. Now, you mentioned earlier that Lowenfeld's book was ahead of its time. What were some of the things that made it so groundbreaking?
Well, one of the ideas that really stands out is his concept of the crisis of adolescence.
Crisis of adolescence, okay.
And as children enter their teenage years, they become so much more aware of the world around them.
More self-aware.
More self-aware, exactly.
Yeah.
And this newfound awareness
Okay.
can really impact their artistic expression.
How so?
Remember how they were perfectly content with those symbolic representations?
That's schematas.
That's schemata, exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, those can seem childish and inadequate.
They're comparing themselves to others.
They're comparing themselves to others to what they see in the media.
Yeah.
And they can feel like they don't measure up.
Like they're losing that joy.
Yeah, it's almost like they're losing that pure, uninhibited joy of creation that they had as younger children.
And that freedom.
That freedom, exactly.
Yeah.
And Lowenfeld was very sensitive to this shift. He saw it as a natural part of development, but also a potential turning point.
Because they could just stop.
Yeah, some teens might give up on art altogether,
Yeah.
feeling like they're just not good enough.
It's sad.
It is sad.
So how do we as adults,
That's the big question.
how do we help teenagers going through this?
Well, Lowenfeld really emphasizes understanding and support.
Okay.
We need to help teenagers bridge this gap.
I know.
Encourage them to hold on to that creative freedom they had as children,
Okay.
while also introducing them to more sophisticated techniques
Okay.
that can help them express themselves in new ways.
What's it about balance?
It's about finding that balance.
Right.
We can expose them to new tools and techniques that allow for more realism.
Right.
But we also need to emphasize that there's no one right way to create art.
Right. It's about finding their own style.
It's about finding their own voice, their own style,
Yeah.
and reminding them that art is not just about technical skill.
Right.
It's about expressing yourself, telling your story.
Making sense of the world.
Making sense of the world, exactly.
And that actually leads us to
Yes.
another one of Lowenfeld's groundbreaking ideas.
Tell me.
His theory of the two types of learners.
Ah, yes, visual and haptic learners.
Okay, so two different types of learners. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so visual learners are drawn to visual details, proportions, how things look.
Okay.
They're often very skilled at accurately representing what they see.
So the kids who can draw like those hyper-realistic portraits.
Exactly. And then you have the haptic learners.
Right.
They experience the world more through bodily sensations, emotions, the feeling of things.
So it's less about what it looks like and more about how it feels.
Exactly. Their art is often more expressive,
Right.
more
Yeah.
about capturing the essence of something,
The feeling.
the feeling rather than its exact visual details.
That makes me think of abstract art,
Yes,
where it's more about color and texture.
that's a great connection.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that Lowenfeld illustrated this concept through his study of blind sculptors.
Blind sculptors.
Yes, he studied two incredibly talented blind sculptors.
That's amazing.
But they had very different approaches.
Oh,
One focused on the overall appearance of the form, striving for smooth, harmonious surfaces.
okay.
The other was more drawn to the expressive details, the nuances of texture and form that could be felt with the hands.
Wow. So even without sight,
Even without sight,
they had these different approaches.
they embodied those visual and haptic approaches.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So we've covered so much with Lowenfeld.
We have.
Those scribbling toddlers, the teenage crisis, the different learning styles.
Yeah.
What does it all mean? What are the wider implications of his work?
Well, for one, I think Lowenfeld's work really highlights the importance of recognizing and nurturing
Okay.
these individual approaches to creativity.
Okay.
Whether a child is a visual or haptic learner,
Mhm.
understanding their strengths and tendencies can help educators create supportive learning environments.
So it's not one size fits all
Absolutely not.
when it comes to art.
It's about tailoring our teaching methods to meet the needs of each individual learner.
Yeah. And that applies beyond art too, right? Like thinking about problem solving
Yeah.
and just life in general.
It's about recognizing that there are different ways of seeing the world,
Different ways of thinking.
different ways of thinking and creating.
And those differences are valuable.
And those differences are valuable, exactly.
Yeah.
And Lowenfeld goes even further than that.
Yeah. Okay.
He emphasized the therapeutic power of art.
Oh, wow.
He believed that art could be a powerful tool
Mm-hmm.
for emotional expression and self-discovery, for healing and growth.
Therapeutic power. Tell me more about that.
Well, he shares examples in the book of how art helped children work through emotional challenges,
Okay.
build self-confidence, and develop a stronger connection to the world around them.
So it's not just about making pretty pictures.
No, it's about using art as a means of communication and healing.
It's giving them a voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that message is even more relevant today
Oh, absolutely.
in our fast-paced, technology-driven world.
Yeah, where kids are facing so much pressure.
So much pressure, so many challenges.
So we've really gone deep on Lowenfeld.
We have.
What are some key takeaways?
Well, I think, as we've seen, Lowenfeld really emphasizes the stages of creative development.
Yeah.
Each stage has its own unique characteristics,
Mm-hmm.
and they all build upon each other to contribute to the development of creative thinking.
And he gives us real strategies for nurturing that creativity.
Yeah.
Like encouraging those free movements in the scribbling stage.
Yes.
Respecting those schemata as expressions of active knowledge.
Exactly.
And embracing those unique visual and haptic approaches.
It's about seeing children's art not just as cute drawings, but as windows into their cognitive and emotional development.
It's so much more than that.
It is.
Yeah.
And understanding those stages and those individual differences can help us be better educators, parents, and caretakers.
Yeah.
It's about fostering those creative sparks, recognizing that there's no one right way to be creative.
Right. And it's not just about art.
Exactly.
It's about giving them those tools
It's about equipping them with those creative tools to navigate the world,
to think outside the box.
to approach challenges with ingenuity and resilience.
Absolutely. Now, Lowenfeld's book was written in 1949,
A while ago.
a while ago.
Yes.
But it's still so relevant today.
It's remarkable how relevant his insights remain.
Yeah. Which raises an interesting question for our listener.
What's that?
You know, Lowenfeld couldn't have predicted the rise of digital technology
Right.
and all of its impact on kids' lives.
Mhm.
So how do you think these new tools and technologies, smartphones, tablets, digital art programs, are shaping children's creative development today?
That is a great question and something to really ponder as you continue to explore this field.
It's a whole new world of creativity out there.
It is.
It's been an amazing journey exploring Lowenfeld's work.
It has.
And I hope you all feel as inspired as I do to nurture that creativity in the children in your lives.
I hope so too.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
It really is amazing how much Lowenfeld was able to uncover about kids and creativity way back then.
It really is, it speaks to the power of observation
Yeah.
and taking the time to understand how children learn and grow.
And how art can be such a powerful tool
Mm-hmm.
in that process.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that Lowenfeld saw art as having like therapeutic potential.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So Lowenfeld, he believed that art could be incredibly therapeutic for children,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to processing,
Yeah.
big emotions,
Mm.
experiences that might be hard to put into words.
Yeah.
He saw it as a way for them to
Yeah.
express themselves freely without judgment
Okay.
and to kind of work through challenges in this safe, creative space.
So it's almost like art becomes a language
Yes.
in itself
A language of its own.
for them to communicate things they might not be able to say
Mm-hmm.
otherwise.
And this idea of art as therapy, it's still so relevant today.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, art therapy is a growing field
Yeah.
that uses creative processes to improve mental and emotional well-being.
That's fantastic.
It's used with people of all ages,
Okay.
but it can be especially beneficial for children,
Oh, I bet.
who might not have those same verbal skills as adults
Right.
to express what's going on.
I could see how that could be so powerful for kids, who are dealing with family issues or
Absolutely.
social pressures or even just...
Yeah, or even just the everyday stresses of growing up.
Right.
Art can provide that safe outlet,
Mhm.
a way to process those emotions and to find some sense of control
Yeah.
in situations that might feel overwhelming.
It's like giving them a voice.
Yeah,
They don't
right.
even know how to use it.
Yeah, and it's not just about expressing negative emotions
Yeah.
either.
That's true.
Art can also be a way to celebrate joy,
Mhm.
to explore identity,
Right.
to
Yeah.
connect with others, to build confidence.
This has been such an insightful
It has.
deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about how kids' creativity develops
Yeah.
and how we can help nurture that.
It's been a great exploration of Lowenfeld's work.
It really has.
And I think it reminds us that every child is an artist in their own way.
That's a great way to put it.
And, by understanding those different stages of creative development and the individual needs of each child, we can create environments where their creative spirits
Yes.
can truly flourish.
And that's a message for everyone,
Yes.
not just parents and educators, but anyone who interacts with children.
It's a reminder that we have this responsibility to nurture those creative sparks,
Mhm.
to encourage that exploration and experimentation,
Yes, and to celebrate those differences.
and to celebrate the unique ways in which each child sees and expresses themselves.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Lowenfeld's work,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth leaving our listener with one final thought.
Okay.
He wrote this book in 1949,
Right.
long before the digital age.
A different world.
It really makes you wonder what Lowenfeld would say about the role of technology in kids' creativity today.
That is a fascinating question.
Yeah, like how are smartphones, tablets, all those digital art apps
Mm-hmm.
influencing the way kids create and express themselves?
It's something to consider, as we continue to learn and grow alongside the children in our lives.
It's a whole new world of creativity out there.
It is, and it's evolving every day.
It's been a truly enriching deep dive into Lowenfeld's work.
It has.
Thank you so much for joining me on this journey.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, keep nurturing those creative sparks
Yes.
in yourselves and in the children around you.
Yeah.
You never know what amazing things might emerge.
Absolutely keep creating.